So the first thing we're going to do is frame up the silk organza. So if you can take your 12-inch embroidery frame, twill tape, fixing screws, silk organza, make sure you print out your PDF file for the design, and you'll also need a friction pen or pencil, standard sewing thread, standard sewing needle, scissors, ruler, clamp and pins. So you're going to take your roller and slide it into the sidebar here, and you just use a little bit of force to place that in position, and then just add the roller on the other side, like so. And then what you want to make sure is that the twill tape, which is the flappy part here, is facing inwards. So this side goes in here, and then this one. Might need a little bit of force just to take it in. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the long screw, place it from underneath, and then we're going to place the washer on top, and then we're going to add our wing nuts. You don't have to do them too tight, but they need to be firm enough. So just rotate that so it's secure. And then you're going to repeat the same method on all of the other sides. So once they're all in place, like so, like I said, make sure they're not too tight, and also the flappy bit is facing inwards. Now the principles of framing up on a 12-inch embroidery frame is completely relevant to framing up one of the larger ones. And as a beginner, it's really useful to learn on a smaller frame to start off with, because it limits any opportunities to make mistakes. So now that you have put the frame together, we are going to start to attach the silk organza. So what I want you to do is have a good look at the twill tape here. And as you can see that you've got the herringbone going across. So what we want to do is we want to look at this line here. So that's where we're going to line up the silk organza. You want to take the shortest edge, so you don't want to think about placing the fabric down this way. We're actually going to use the narrow part to apply it to this line here. So what you want to do is just line that up with that chevron point, making sure the distance here and here is the same. So I'm just going to move that along a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm just going to put my finger in the center. Take a pin, and you want to catch the pin at an angle. So what we're going to do afterwards is we're going to do a running stitch along there, so it's actually much more efficient to put the pins in that way. So the first pin goes in the middle, and then staying on that line, you want to make sure that you gently tug the fabric so it sits nice and flat, and you want to pin every 1.5 to 2 inches. So just take that pin all the way through, like so. And then just going to be pinning the other side. So it's actually easier if you pin from the center, because that way it makes sure that the fabric doesn't lift or bubble. And then just pin that last one in there, like so. So as you can see, I've kept that straight to the grain, so it's square to the fabric and the frame. Now you're going to take your standard sewing thread, and if you can just thread up your standard sewing needle, so you want to make sure it's double thickness thread, and just make that the length of just below the elbow. That's absolutely fine. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do stab stitches across, and then we're going to do a 1 centimetre running stitch, and then finish with stab stitches at the end. Now the reason why we stab stitch is because we want to make sure that the fabric is nice and secure, because that's where there is the most tension on the fabric. So we're going to work with the line that is about 5 millimeters away up from the edge. So if you use this line here and just keep your stitches even on that line. So lift the needle through the twill tape from underneath, catching just a couple of millimeters away from the edge. You don't have to put a knot in the end because we're just going to stab stitch through a couple of times just to secure that. So take it all the way through. And a stab stitch is just a very small pin stitch. So where you lift through, you're just going to go in very close to where you came out. So it's literally just a 1 millimeter stitch, like so. And then we're just going to work our way across. So you're going to do one more here. So lifting through, stab stitch. And then keep them about a few millimeters apart. Okay, just take that all the way through. And then literally just take the pins out as you go along. And the idea is that you want to remain on that line just to keep the stitches even and consistent. That's the beauty of working on transparent fabric, is you can actually see the direction that you're going in. So just keep it nice and even. Make sure the distance between the stitch is the same. And we just want to do a 1 centimeter running stitch along here. And what you can do is you can gently tug the thread on the way up, just to make sure it's nice and firm. And the reason why we do that is because you're going to be pulling that fabric downwards on both sides. So you want to make sure that that stitch is nice and secure. So when you lift it through, just give it a good tug as you go along. Now the beauty about working on a small frame like this is it really helps to develop your skills a bit quicker before you start to move on to a larger frame. However, the principles of framing up this frame size is completely relevant to a larger frame. So if you want to start thinking about investing in a bigger frame for the future, then at least you'll be able to fully understand how to put it together. And then make sure those stitches are consistent. Okay, so now we're just coming up to the end of the twill tape. So remember, most of the tension is at the corners, so just don't forget to do the stab stitches at the end. So it's quite important that they're in position, and that will just give your fabric a bit more security at the end. So just a couple of millimeters away from each other. And then one more at the end. And then with the final stab stitch, you want to just go in a couple more times before you cut it off at the back. So one more just to finish, like so. Brilliant. Okay, so we're just going to cut that off at the back. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. And the way that we're going to do this, we want to make sure that the fabric is straight and it's not veering off or twisting anywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the fabric tight, so lifting the fabric up. And you just want to make sure the distance here and here is the same. So just be aware of that. And then a good little marker is to have a look at where the staples are. So what you want to do is you want to pull the fabric up, and then you want to place your finger in line with one of the staples. So there's that point there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the fabric back and I'm going to line it up with that staple here. Put my pin in the center, like so. And remember, I'm staying on that line here, so I'm going to follow that line all the way across. So gently pull that fabric taut, like we did on the other side. And then keep going all the way across. And then gently work the other way from the center. Just catching the pins at an angle because it makes it quicker, just releasing them from the fabric as you stitch across. Okay, so now we're going to do the same stitching on the other side. So now you should be in this position here. So the fabric is sagging in the middle, like so. So what we want to do is we want to release one side, and then we're just going to rotate the fabric evenly around each roller. And what you want to do is you don't want to roll it around one side because you'll put too much pressure on the other stitches. So just gently roll away and then just keep that even on both sides. So make sure there's enough fabric on both of the rollers. Just keep rotating as you go along. And then you just want to tighten those up afterwards. And you're starting to create that drum-like finish that we're looking for before we start beading. So the next bit you're going to do is you're going to take your twill tape. So you'll have two pieces here, so one for each side of the side bars, and we're going to pull the fabric now in the other direction. So make sure you've got your pins handy, and you want to take the tail end of your twill tape and you're going to place it against the fabric. Now you want to make sure that you are 1.5 centimeters away from the edge of the fabric. So the reason why this is, otherwise if we're too close to the edge, the fabric may start to fray over time. So it's very important that you have a little bit of seam allowance at the edge. So we're going to take our pin and we're just going to line that up about 2 centimeters away from the edge here, so from the side roller. And you want to catch the twill tape twice. So you're going to plunge the pin and then you're going to use your fingers from underneath to lift it through, going back down again, and then catch it so that you work all the way across the twill tape. Then you're going to take the twill tape over and then under. Gently tug it so it lifts ever so slightly here, so you're just tugging a little bit. And then if you can, put your fingers around the frame, like so. I've got very long fingers, so if you struggle to do that, you can actually just put your fingers in that position there, like that. So you want to have a distance of about a couple of centimeters in between each piece of twill tape. And you're going to do the same thing. So you're going to catch the fabric with the pin once and then twice. And you're using your fingers to lift it through to catch it on the other side. Over, under. Again, just lifting it through. So you're just tugging ever so slightly just to make it quite firm. And then take it all the way across. So we don't stitch these pins in, we just leave the pins into the twill tape. So once they're in position, that's all we need to do. And this really creates that extra tension on the fabric, which is great for creating that solid base ready for beading. So bring that through. You might have a little bit left over, that's absolutely fine. We're going to catch one more in here at the end. And then lift that through. And then that little extra bit there, we're going to pin that to the back. So just going to place a pin here at the back, like so. And then you can just tuck that little bit inside here, so that's out the way. We don't need that. Okay, so you're going to repeat the same method on the other side.